The GIM Channel podcast, bringing you the big picture on geoscientific information management through interviews and discussions.
Hello, welcome to the first episode of Acquire's podcast, the GIM Channel, delivering insights on people, processes, and technology for managing one of the natural resource industry's greatest business assets, its geoscientific data. I'm the host of the GIM Channel, Sarah Mitchell, and I'm joined by Misha Stacker from Acquire Technology Solutions. Hi, Misha.
Good morning. Hello.
2016 marks 20 years of business for Acquire, and today we've invited a guest speaker, Paul Murtagh, from one of Acquire's longest-standing customers, Anglo American Coal, to join us. Paul is an experienced exploration geologist and currently holds the role of the Exploration Services Superintendent at Anglo American. How are you, Paul?
I'm well, thanks, Sarah, and it's nice to join you and Misha this morning.
Terrific. Now, we know that you've been working with GIM and in mining and exploration in the natural resources industry for a long time. So could you just give us a little bit of information about when you started your career in mining?
Yeah, sure. I've got about 21 years experience now, and I started back in the mid-90s as a contract exploration geologist. I had these wild dreams of becoming a volcanologist or something, which were quickly brought back to reality when I realised there was a bit of a lull in the industry at the time, and many geologists that come out of university in Queensland end up in the coal industry, which is exactly where I ended up. And I spent probably the first 3 months of my career, once I finally did get a job, actually rehabilitating 350 odd historic borehole sites. So it wasn't actually much to do with geology, but I was certainly out on a big lease of land where we were cleaning up some sites, and there was a lot of locating of these old holes and sort of sign-off data that needed recording. So there was data involved, but it was sort of a bit of a strange start to my career. That was kind of about 21 years ago, and that was in the Bowen Basin in Queensland.
It sounds like just the kind of project they would give to a graduate as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, what were some of the trends and the big issues in the industry at the time that you graduated? Yeah,
look, as I said, it was a pretty tough time for particularly the coal industry at the time, just like we are now. We're in a pretty tough time now. And it is a cyclical industry, and I've certainly seen those peaks and troughs in that 21-year time period. But back then, it was an interesting time. There was a lot of change going on, particularly in safety. We had the internet was certainly starting to gather momentum. And when I came in, I knew my role was about collecting data, but I didn't really get that and where that all fitted in to the bigger picture of my role in the mining industry. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was kind of in the middle of the data management revolution that was going on within the mining industry. So it was certainly an interesting time, and there was a lot to learn from someone who was straight out of uni.
Paul, why do you think that what caused that data revolution? What happened, 20, 25 years ago that made people to start to consider that data was a valuable commodity in the mining industry? Yeah,
look, geologists are great. I've always say they're great data gatherers, but they're not necessarily the best data managers. In exploration, you're out there collecting a lot of data, and typically in the past, the bulk of that data was collected on paper. So we've sort of come into this digital age, and I've certainly seen us go into now logging in the field, directly into tablet PCs and things like that. But back then, it was all on paper, and even some of the most critical data, like the geophysics data sets and so on, were all analog recorded. So there was a lot of money being spent coming up with new solutions and new ways to manage that digital data. There was, a myriad of formats that were being used, and that caused some problems as well, I guess, along the way. So, it was a very interesting time, and look, we're still going through it. but we have certainly come of age in terms of a lot of the technology and the innovation that's gone on in that last 20 years as well.
That's a fantastic kind of insight into 20 years ago, to think that the internet was just starting to make a presence in business. I mean, it's so much of what we deal with every day. What kind of, you mentioned that the innovations coming through, how are you seeing these emerge?
I think there's lots of new technologies that are, making life easier for people in the workplace, and certainly in some cases, and particularly this is the case I'm starting to see in the mining industry, is it's actually replacing people. Automation is gaining a lot of momentum. There's operations in the WA that I know of, iron ore operations that are all the truck fleets there are manless. In fact, the rail that takes that ore to the port is also not even manned. So they're taking people out of positions that can potentially harm them, which is good. But I think this isn't just being driven by safety. I mean, it's also being driven by efficiency and minimising error as well. So yeah, look, it's again, it is an interesting time. We're also seeing the onset of social media and the ability for people to be able to communicate much more effectively, and in some cases not so effectively through the use of social media. So that side of things is also interesting. But in terms of data management, I think there's been some wonderful innovation going on over that period of time as well that has made certainly the life of the exploration geologists, resource geologists, and a lot of people down the chain who use that data a lot easier as well. I can think of a number of different solutions that even we've implemented here in-house that are saving us countless man hours, whether it's as simple as going to an electronic kind of drill plod and having the efficiencies around that with importing that data into a usable format and then using that data down the track. So workflows are continually improving, and I suspect they'll continue to do that with the systems that we now have available to us and the hard technology as well.
That's great, Paul. So it sounds like technology and new digital innovations are really helping manage your geoscientific data and your information within your projects. What other ways are you seeing that GIM initiatives are helping organisations or your company in the current market conditions? I
think the efficiencies are the right word. It's at the moment in the industry, it's very much about being cost effective, and that's not just physically in terms of moving product to the market, but it's also about being cost effective with one of your key assets, and that's data management as well. So we're seeing a lot of that going on with some of the workflows that we've been able to implement through our GIM. And I guess the other big thing is it saves time. So getting away from the paper-based technology and into this digital age is certainly doing that. And we're continuing on that trail. We're not completely free of paper yet, but we've certainly made some big strides in that area. These types of initiatives, typically do take time to establish, to test them and to refine them. But typically they are worth doing. And once they're set up, they generally benefit the organisation in terms of, reducing costs or improving workforce efficiencies.
I can see the reason why geologists would love this, because their original observations and measurements are stored, and they have more confidence in the data that they're using. What advantages or benefits would the wider business see for it, or not necessarily the business, but a mine site?
I think access and interpretation of data. So having readily available information that's up to date. I quite often use the term quality data, and what I mean by that is data that's reliable, that's consistent, that it's on time, and it's available to the end users, to the people who need that data when they need it. Having the right format and the right platform to be able to do that within your organisation is critical. So what does this do? It improves decision making down the track, because having that quality data, the reliable information that you're basing your decisions on, is critical to the success of any business. I look at our data as an intangible asset that's often difficult to value in a mining environment, because you quite often don't know whether a particular area or prospect is actually going to be economically viable until you've done all the calculations. So it may look like the best deposit, while you're drilling away and you're exploring that deposit, but there's a lot of other factors that go into making it a mine down the track. So, and a lot of decisions need to be made along the way. So having that right information and correct, available on time, all of those things to the people who need it, gives you a better chance of making better business decisions.
Paul, that's really interesting, and I would be interested to know what advice you could give to other geologists or other people working in exploration to look at these kinds of tools or to invest in these kinds of tools, because my sense is this isn't it still isn't widespread.
No, it's not, and my experience is that different geologists, this is a personality thing and a kind of inherent talent or desire to be involved with data management, because my experience is that people are the key ingredients in the management of data. So you can have the best technology and procedures in the world, but without the right people looking after the data, then the whole thing can fail, basically, because you're not having the right people pushing it and driving what your vision is around management of data. So people are definitely key, trying to get the right tools and solutions in place that are going to deliver the information to the right people. You do need the right people to be able to put those things together.
How important is it? Because I know you're running a lot of sites. I think you've got 7 sites that you're running. How important is it to have a common process and common tools across all of your sites?
That's a great question, and I don't say that because I don't know how to answer it, but the reason I think it's a great question is because it's something I'm very passionate about, and that's standardisation of data. And when we initially implemented our GIMs, to actually sell it to each site, we had to kind of replicate their existing workflows at the time. That helped us get buy-in from them at the time, but what it meant was we ended up with 6 or 7 slightly disparate and decentralised databases that were effectively managing the same data. So a couple of years after the initial implementations, I made the decision to standardise all of our virtual fields and all the objects and tools that we use to get the data in and data out of our databases, and standardise all the workflows. And that was a big job because I had to kind of go and sell it again, But once we got that down and bedded down with people and that familiarity, I could take any geologist from any site and put them onto any other site, and they knew that what they were looking at. They were familiar with the workflow and the graphics in front of them. So, and the other thing that's good about that whole standardisation process is once you have standardised, it's much easier to maintain going forward and to continue to sell and promote that product. So it's been a godsend at the end of the day, and here we are some sort of 7 or 8 years later after that process, and it's been a lot easier to manage. If we continued on with that sort of decentralised setup, it would have become very, very difficult to manage from a resource point of view.
What do you see that's coming down the barrel? What emerging trends do you see for the next 20 years in mining exploration and really in data management?
Clearly, big data is not going away. And geoscience is getting better and better at producing vast quantities of data. That is only really useful if it's stored appropriately and, again, readily available for interrogation. So I see big data as being a key challenge. I think hand in hand with that is, as we move away from this kind of downloadable apps environment that we're in at the moment, to accessing more online type solutions, I think that's going to make, for a challenge around efficient and effective, I guess, connectivity, particularly in remote locations for the mining industry. We need reliable and efficient, connections to production databases, particularly if they're going to be housed in these kind of cloud environments. So I see that as a challenge, but just certainly I see it as the way forward. I think the other key with that kind of going into, moving large data sets into this kind of cloud setting is that it will ultimately improve interoperability, which is at the moment still an ongoing challenge in the mining industry between, for instance, modelling systems and GIMs and other downstream applications that we use. So I think that's going to be a critical challenge to the mining data flow chain, but one that's certainly not insurmountable. I can see it's going to deliver some interesting solutions, and we're going to see lots of different things on the table that I think one of the other big challenges is just going to try to decide which way to go if you're in the mining industry with these solutions.
Excellent. Paul, what advice would you give to somebody that's, you talked about the job that you had when you first started. What advice would you give to a new graduate coming into the mining industry right now?
Ask questions, learn as much as you can. Be curious. Don't assume anything. It's my golden rule for data management. Be willing to learn and care about what you're doing. Particularly if you are in data management, you need people who care about data because it needs looking after.
That's excellent. Thanks so much, Paul. We've really enjoyed this conversation. If you've enjoyed our discussion, please tell your friends and colleagues about this podcast, which you can find on our Acquire newsroom at acquire.com.au.
You've been listening to Acquire's podcast, The GIM Channel. Find us at acquire.com.au.